So in researching this video for you all today, I've been really helped by this book, RU486, Myths, Misconceptions and Morals. And it's by a bunch of 3 radical feminists who are health researchers. I think the really important thing to note is that these women who wrote this book are passionately pro-abortion. They're radical feminists who believe that abortion should be available to women on request at any gestation. And in fact, the lead author of the book, Renate Klein, she wrote an opinion piece in The Australian because once they published this book, they started getting hounded by pro-choicers and by pharmaceutical companies who started to discredit them. And essentially what she said is, I'm not a Catholic, I'm not a man, I'm not a right to lifer, but I oppose the abortion drug RU486. I'm a long-time feminist and health activist who is committed to women's access to safe and legal abortion, and I'm getting exasperated with the pro-choice movement's simplistic message about RU486. And so what they do in this book is a deep dive into the safety of these pills. Actually, what they find is that the abortion pill isn't safe or effective. So they say it's not safe because women have severe bleeding when they take abortion pills, and that this bleeding can actually last for weeks and even over a month. They say there's adverse complications that are unpredictable, things like vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, really severe cramping. Sometimes a woman will need emergency treatment like a blood transfusion. But they also point out it's not effective either as a method of abortion. So they compare it to surgical abortion, which is effective in a abortion pill abortion. There's a complication rate of 6%. And so what this means is that, for example, in Australia, last year, there were 30,000 women that took abortion pills. By that statistic, 1,800 women, so 1,800 women would have had to be rushed to the emergency department because they had retained products of conception, which is a fancy way of saying there's bits of the fetus, there's pregnancy tissue inside the woman that has been retained. And so the woman has to go through a surgical abortion anyway to get everything out. And so what this book says is that abortion pills are neither safe and they're not effective. And they also point out that women have died from abortion pills. Since the FDA approved the abortion pills, 28 women have lost their life after taking them. And one of those women was 18-year-old Holly Patterson. She walked into a Planned Parenthood clinic, and by her father's own words, she was healthy, she was happy, she was vibrant, she had a whole life ahead of her. But a few hours later, after taking RU486, she dies. And he then devotes his entire life to overturning the legality of these drugs and to drawing attention to how dangerous they are. Another young woman, Manon Jones, she took abortion pills and experienced heavy bleeding, felt really uncomfortable, knew that something was wrong, actually went to the hospital emergency department 2 times, but was sent away and told, oh, this is just normal, you'll get heavy bleeding after the abortion pills. She then goes on a holiday as planned, but while she's there, 13 days later, after taking the abortion pills, she tragically dies. In Australia, a young woman who had walked into a Murray Stopes International Clinic and taken these abortion pills, she died, but there wasn't a coronial inquest. We don't even know her name. So what's really concerning here is that we don't actually have proper information about what happens to women when they take abortion pills. We know that there are serious complications for some women. We also know, and it's important to admit, that tens of thousands of women take these pills and they survive. It's not like every woman who takes these pills dies, far from it. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're safe. In fact, the FDA in 2016 actually removed the reporting requirement for adverse events for abortion pills. So when people say, oh, abortion pills, they're safer than Tylenol, they're safer than Panadol, they're safer than Viagra, we actually don't know that that is true, because the only adverse event that the FDA makes you report on is death. So if a woman takes an abortion pill and dies, then you have to report that. But any other adverse event is not mandatory to report. So we don't know that abortion pills are safer and better than Tylenol and Panadol. And in fact, this book, RU486, very clearly says that they're not. Where does this leave us today? Look, I think for me, it means I think we need to do far more research on these pills. I think that we need to have really strong regulations around how they use. So just recently, the Fifth Circuit Court in the US, which is the court below the Supreme Court, they reinstated a black box warning on abortion pills. Now, a black box warning is the most serious warning that they can give, and they said that the FDA has to have that on abortion pills. And what they've said is that these pills can't be mailed out. They can only be available after 7 weeks gestation. They must have an ultrasound, and that the consultation to prescribe these pills must occur in person, and that they can't just be given out by anyone, midwives, nurses, or through pharmacies, but they have to be given out through the hospital clinic or at the doctor's clinic. So, I think that probably sets up a good framework for where we should be looking at in Australia. And I think what we have to do is do due diligence to this issue of abortion pills. We know that it's really hard to get unbiased research on this because this is such a vexed and controversial space. I think that's why I like this book so much, because these guys are passionately pro-abortion, and while I disagree with them on that, I do think it gives them credibility when they talk about RU486. And so I would just encourage everybody to read this. And I think we have to really, at the end of the day, say we can't be giving women access to abortion above their health needs. And if the method of abortion is unsafe for them, then if you are from a pro-choice perspective, then I think you need to be looking at a different method of abortion.